9 Challenges to Indian Democracy. Introduction: India's democratic experiment. India is the world's largest democracy, a political system based on universal adult suffrage, constitutional rule, and popular participation. Since 1950, it has upheld democratic ideals despite vast diversity in language, religion, caste, and culture. However, democracy is not a static achievement, it is a continuing process of realization. Over the years, Indian democracy has faced numerous challenges, structural, social, economic, and ethical, that test its strength and resilience. These challenges do not negate democracy, but highlight the gaps between democratic ideals and their practical realization. Structural and institutional challenges. 1. Corruption and misuse of power. Corruption remains one of the gravest threats to India's democratic integrity. When public offices are used for personal gain, it undermines the rule of law and erodes citizens' faith in institutions. Corruption distorts electoral processes, weakens administration, and diverts public resources meant for welfare. Example: scams such as the 2G spectrum case, coal block allocations, or political horse trading expose how democratic institutions are misused for private benefit. 2. Criminalization of politics. The entry of criminal elements into politics poses a direct threat to democracy. Many elected representatives face serious criminal charges, turning elections into contests of money and muscle rather than merit and ideology. This blurs the moral distinction between politics and crime, undermining the ethical foundation of representative government. Example: according to recent data by the Association for Democratic Reforms, ADR, over 40% of members of parliament have declared criminal cases against them. 3. Electoral malpractices. While India holds regular and largely free elections, issues such as vote buying, booth capturing, fake voting, and manipulation of voter data continue to plague the system. Money and identity politics influence voter behavior, weakening the spirit of free choice. Although the Election Commission of India has introduced reforms like EVMs, model codes of conduct, and voter awareness campaigns, the quality of democracy still depends on the ethical conduct of political actors. 4. Weakness of political parties. Political parties are essential for democracy, but in India many have become personality-centric, dynastic, and ideologically shallow. They often prioritize power over policy, promoting populism instead of genuine problem-solving. Internal democracy within parties is minimal. Leadership remains concentrated in families or cliques. Such a culture prevents the emergence of competent and accountable leadership, reducing politics to opportunism. 5. Bureaucratic inefficiency and politicization. The bureaucracy, meant to serve as the neutral executor of policy, often suffers from red tape, corruption, and political interference. Appointments and transfers based on political loyalty weaken institutional integrity. This erodes public trust and results in poor governance and administrative paralysis. 2. Social and cultural challenges. 6. Casteism and communalism. Caste and religion, though constitutionally irrelevant, still dominate India's political and social life. Caste-based mobilization divides citizens into vote banks, turning elections into contests of identity rather than ideology. Communalism, which emphasizes religious divisions, leads to polarization and even violence. Example, communal riots, such as those in Gujarat, Delhi, and Muzaffarnagar, and caste-based agitations, like Jat, Maratha, and Patidar movements, reveal the fragility of social harmony. Such divisions threaten the secular and inclusive fabric envisioned in the Constitution. 7. Regionalism and linguistic tensions. Regional identities are legitimate in a diverse country, but when regionalism turns aggressive, it threatens national integration. Demands for separate states, disputes over resources, or linguistic chauvinism, example, anti-Hindi movements, interstate river disputes, often create political instability. While federalism accommodates regional aspirations, excessive regionalism weakens national unity. 8. Gender inequality and underrepresentation of women. Although India has constitutional guarantees of equality, women remain underrepresented in politics and public life. Social barriers, patriarchal attitudes, and gender-based violence limit their participation. Example, women constitute only around 15% of the Lok Sabha and less than 10% of state assemblies, despite comprising half the population. While Panchayati Raj, 73rd Amendment, has reserved one-third of seats for women, national politics still lacks gender parity. 9. Poverty and illiteracy. A democracy can function effectively only when citizens are aware, educated, and economically secure. Poverty and illiteracy make people vulnerable to manipulation through money, religion, or caste-based propaganda. Economic deprivation limits political participation, turning democracy into a privilege of the informed elite. Example, vote buying and populist promises of cash or subsidies exploit the economically poor. 10. Population explosion. India's massive and growing population puts tremendous pressure on resources, administration, and public services. Unemployment, urban congestion, and environmental degradation arising from overpopulation aggravate socio-economic inequalities, straining democratic governance. Without effective population management and human development, democracy struggles to deliver results. 3. Economic and developmental challenges. 11. Economic inequality and unemployment. Despite rapid economic growth, wealth remains concentrated in a few hands, creating a widening gap between rich and poor. The coexistence of corporate affluence and rural poverty contradicts the democratic ideal of equality. Unemployment, especially among youth, breeds frustration and alienation from the democratic process. This economic disparity creates a two-tier democracy, one for the privileged and another for the marginalized. 12. Corruption in welfare programs. Welfare schemes meant to uplift the poor often suffer from leakages, mismanagement, and favoritism. Middlemen and corrupt officials siphon funds, reducing the real impact of development. This breeds cynicism among the poor, making democracy appear as a tool of exploitation rather than empowerment. 13. Influence of money and corporate power. Indian elections are among the most expensive in the world. Corporate funding and black money dominate the electoral process, giving undue influence to the wealthy. Example, the introduction of electoral bonds has raised concerns over transparency and corporate control over politics. Such trends threaten equal political opportunity, turning democracy into plutocracy, Rule of money. 4. Ethical and ideological challenges. 14. Decline in democratic values. The spirit of tolerance, civility, and respect for opposition is weakening. Political discourse often degenerates into personal attacks and populism rather than rational debate. Elected leaders sometimes disregard constitutional norms, resulting in majoritarianism or authoritarian tendencies. Example, the misuse of sedition laws, restrictions on dissent, and attacks on freedom of expression challenge liberal democratic ethics. 15. Weak civil society and citizen apathy. Democracy thrives on active public participation, not just voting every 5 years. However, apathy, ignorance, and disinterest among citizens weaken accountability. Civil society and NGOs, though active, often face political hostility or lack of resources. A passive citizenry allows corruption and injustice to persist. 16. Media manipulation and fake news. A free press is essential for democracy, but increasing corporate control and political bias threaten its independence. The rise of fake news, paid news, and misinformation through social media distorts public opinion and polarizes society. The media, once called the fourth pillar of democracy, often becomes an instrument of propaganda rather than truth. 17. Judicial backlog and access to justice. Although India has an independent judiciary, the system is burdened with millions of pending cases, delaying justice for years. Justice delayed becomes justice denied, weakening people's faith in democratic institutions. Moreover, high litigation costs make justice inaccessible to the poor, contradicting the ideal of equal justice for all. Emerging and global challenges. 18. Rise of populism and majoritarianism. Democracy sometimes turns into populism, where leaders manipulate public emotion rather than promote rational policy. Majoritarian politics disregards minority rights, undermining pluralism, the very essence of Indian democracy. 19. Environmental degradation. Unchecked industrialization, deforestation, and pollution threaten not only the environment but also the livelihoods of millions. Sustainable development, though a constitutional goal, Article 48A, often takes a backseat to political expediency. 20. Threats to federalism. Conflicts between the Union and states, misuse of Article 356, and the centralization of power undermine federal balance. True democracy requires cooperative federalism, where both levels of government function harmoniously. Example, disputes over GST, allocation of funds, and governors' overreach have occasionally strained center-state relations. 6. Measures to strengthen Indian democracy. 1. Political reforms, electoral reforms, transparent funding, and decriminalization of politics. 2. Administrative reforms, merit-based bureaucracy, digitization, and anti-corruption mechanisms. 3. Judicial reforms, fast-track courts, alternative dispute resolution, and greater access to justice. 4. Civic education, promoting democratic awareness, constitutional values, and gender equality. 5. Media responsibility, fact-checking, regulation of fake news, and protection of press freedom. 6. Strengthening federalism, genuine decentralization through Panchayati Raj and fiscal autonomy. 7. Summary for quick understanding. Indian democracy faces structural, social, economic, and moral challenges. Key issues include corruption, criminalization of politics, casteism, poverty, inequality, and declining ethical standards. Despite these, democracy has survived due to constitutional resilience, judicial activism, and active civil society. The future of Indian democracy depends on citizen vigilance, political accountability, and ethical leadership that upholds constitutional ideals of justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Quick revision notes. 1. Political challenges, corruption, criminalization, weak parties, electoral malpractice. 2. Social challenges, casteism, communalism, regionalism, gender inequality. 3. Economic challenges, poverty, unemployment, inequality, corruption in welfare. 4. Ethical challenges, decline in democratic values, apathy, media manipulation. 5. Institutional challenges, judicial delays, centralization, weak governance. One-line questions and answers for revision. 1. What is the biggest threat to Indian democracy? Corruption and criminalization of politics. 2. What role does casteism play in Indian politics? It divides voters into caste-based groups, undermining equality. 3. What is meant by electoral malpractice? Unethical practices such as vote buying and fake voting. 4. What is political apathy? Lack of active citizen participation beyond voting. 5. Which article ensures cooperative federalism in India? Part 11 and 12 relating to distribution of powers. 6. What is the main cause of economic inequality? Unequal distribution of resources and wealth. 7. Which institution safeguards free and fair elections? Election Commission of India. 8. What is the consequence of judicial delay? Justice delayed is justice denied. 9. What undermines secularism in India? Communal politics and religious polarization. 10. What is the most effective remedy for democratic decline? Active, informed, and responsible citizen participation. Final connection. Indian democracy is a remarkable experiment in pluralism, balancing liberty with diversity. Its challenges, corruption, inequality, caste, and intolerance are real but not insurmountable. The solution lies not merely in institutional reform but in moral renewal, nurturing citizens who value truth, tolerance, and justice over power and prejudice. As Dr. B.R. Ambedkar warned, democracy is not a form of government, but a mode of associated living, a habit of mind. India's democratic success, therefore, depends not only on its constitution but on the character and consciousness of its citizens.